It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
Fantasy Football Hustle, Brian Drake, Dwain McFarland, talking about running backs here. It's a running back bonanza. If you want to get into some running backs that might go in the first, second round, you're going to want to head over into the archives, either on YouTube or on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the show we did a week ago. And that was really good and tons of great content. Thanks to all the folks who downloaded the shows on YouTube. We're going to break these guys up individually. We still have a few more guys to talk about, one of them being someone who just requested a trade this week. That's Raheem Mostert, coming off the board at running back 26. And a lot of people are way into Mostert, okay? He had 8 touchdowns in his final 9 games last year, put up numbers 772 and 8 on the ground, finished the season in a half-point PPR at running back 24. Breida's gone.
Who does this smell like, Drake? Who does this smell like? It smells like Damian Williams. Now, granted, the price, the price is much better here.
I loved Damian Williams last year when you and I were doing shows. I'm not on Mostert. I tweeted this week, follow me at Drake Fantasy, I tweeted that he has zero leverage in a trade because, number one, he's just a guy. He's been on 8 different teams.
He's 28 years old.
Yes, but he's in that Shanahan offense. Anybody can get plugged into that role if you have any kind of skill and you're going to produce. And guess what? Maybe it's Jermichael Hasty, who they got as a UDFA, or, Jerick McKinnon, who they're paying a boatload of dough to. Someone's going to take this role. If
Tevin Coleman can run with this offense.
Yeah.
And I don't even like Tevin Coleman, but he can be fine.
This is all about the Shanahan scheme here, but Mostert kind of was the last man standing and put up some really good numbers at the end of the year and into the playoffs. But all right, so we're looking here ahead, though. We're not looking behind us. Let's look at 2020. Let's assume he's on the San Francisco 49ers, and you're sitting there in the start of the 5th round. You need a running back. Raheem Mostert's there. Are you pulling the trigger on him, Dwain?
I think it depends on roster construction, Drake, really. I mean, it comes down to if you want the upside. You're kind of funny, right? Because if you liked Damian Williams last year in the 2nd, you should actually like Raheem Mostert in the 5th or 6th.
I know. I don't know why I'm not into it.
Because it's priced in. Because the upside is the same, right? If for some reason Shanahan moves away from hot hand approach, which it's funny. People, you go grab, those last few weeks, and you do see the upside of Mostert, but there are still issues, and Shanahan's still willing, to ride, another back. So if at the end of the season, week 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, you got 3 weeks, right, where he almost gets to RB1. But let's talk a little bit, about the challenges with Mostert. Even in those weeks where he was doing well, he was still at or right below the RB2 threshold from a snap percentage. He was still sharing with Tevin Coleman. And before that, Tevin Coleman had been the guy, and Mostert was the guy coming in and just getting a little bit of work along with Breida. And then in the playoffs, we even had a game where Tevin Coleman did that again and became the lead runner. So people, just seem to forget some of those things. And the other problem here is it was, again, hyper efficiency. So even in those weeks, Drake, where he hit those fantasy points, look at his carries, weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. He topped the RB1 mark one time with 19. The 3 of the other 4 weeks, he didn't even get to the RB2 mark, which is only 12 carries. He had 3 weeks at 10, 11, and 10. Mm-hmm. And then in week 15, he got just above the RB2 threshold.
He's helped a lot with those touchdowns.
Yeah, with 14 attempts. So this is a guy that wasn't even getting all the attempts inside the 5 either. He's breaking long runs. In those same weeks, Drake, week 13, the 49ers didn't have a carry inside the 5. Week 14, they did. He didn't get any of that work. Week 15, he got 1/3 of the carries. He got 1 carry inside the 5. Week 16, the Niners didn't have a carry inside the 5. And week 17, he got all the work when the Niners had pretty much everything wrapped up, and they just let Mostert go out there and run. So when I look at Mostert, man, it just feels way, way, way more shaky than what most people, are thinking. Now, having said that, that it is showing in his ADP, but from a standpoint of running routes, he's also barely touching RB2. He's below RB3 every one of these weeks. So the guy had some RB1 or solid, really good RB2 production, really borderline RB1 production down the stretch, but he didn't get the carries he needed. He didn't get the routes ran he needed. He didn't get the carries inside the 5. I don't know what else to say to folks other than this guy is very, very much due for regression. He could very easily be replaced on a hot hand approach. Now, what I'll say is if you're just wanting to swing for the fences, right? Let's say you're going contrarian and you start off and you draft 3 receivers and a tight end. You go receiver, tight end, receiver, receiver, because your thought process is some of these receivers everybody thinks going to be good because we've had years like this before, and round 6, 7, 5, 8 aren't going to be that good. And so you think I'm going to just draft the receivers I love and I'm going to get an elite tight end. And you want to mix Mostert in, to your strategy as an RB, as your RB2 or RB1, or you're just going to draft 5 running backs after that, right? You're just going to go runner, 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 runner. Fine. Put Mostert in the mix. I think, making the bet on him, that this is going to happen, I think is a bit silly. Literally nothing about his utilization metrics say this guy can be an RB1. He's living on more efficiency almost than what Mark Ingram was. Mark Ingram at least was hitting some of the thresholds you need. And because they're similar, right? 2 guys in really good offenses that have high efficiency. But Ingram was at least hitting the thresholds you want from a temp standpoint to get into that RB2 range most weeks. He was hitting he had several games where he was getting some of the routes ran, when the Ravens were in closer games. Yeah, they weren't great, but Mostert's nowhere close to any of that. He had 1 week where he hit some of the marks you want. So the ADP is not crazy if you can get him in, the 60s, get him in the 70s sometimes, and you're just swinging for the upside. So that's the way I think of it. If you're going something contrarian and you're swinging for the fences, great. But here's what I would rather do, Drake. Just wait and draft Tevin Coleman in the 9th or 10th round. They're probably going to be much closer than what people think. And the number of attempts, the percentage of, routes ran, Coleman's going to beat him. Coleman's going to get more work in that facet of the game. And Coleman could easily pass him to be the lead, candidate to get the most carries again, right? And injuries happen, all sorts of stuff. So, and like you said, some third guy we've never heard of by week 7 will be the guy that the 49ers are using. So,
like Raheem Mostert, who nobody was talking about a year ago.
Yeah, Sigmund Bloom. I do give him credit. He was talking about him in the preseason, and I thought, Sigmund, you're just being wild-eyed, but he was right. So for Mostert, that's the way I look at it. In certain roster constructions where you're going to build your roster with receivers and tight ends early just to be different, and you're going to come back and follow that up and take like 4 runners later, which I don't really recommend doing that often. It's nice to do it some just because, there is more value like we've talked about at receiver, but we could be wrong on this stuff. So there is logic in playing a contrarian style of going 0 RB this year. And if it hits, you're going to be one of the few people in these big tournaments that actually used it, because most people won't have done that. And so in that kind of play, that's where I would say Mostert could provide some value as one of like 5 runners you take when you just start swinging in round, 5. All of a sudden you go Montgomery, Mostert. We'll talk about a few other guys later, but say you grab Kareem Hunt with upside, and you're just piling up guys, right? In that case, then I think fine, take Mostert.
To use a baseball analogy, he is that guy who hits 200 and then goes on a hot streak in July and hits 10 home runs. And everyone goes, oh, yeah, remember the great season he had? You go, well, yeah, the guy hit 205, but then he hit 15 home runs in the last month of the season, and now everybody thinks he's great, versus a guy like Aaron Judge who's hitting 300 all season long.